Fantastic. So welcome everybody to this webinar for the Circular Buildings Coalition, and in particular, an exciting launch of the open call project for blueprint projects that was launched towards the end of last week. And this webinar is to provide a briefing and share a couple of really exciting examples for the blueprint projects as well from previous years. So as part of the session, we have a couple of speakers to join as well. But first, to introduce myself, my name's Max Russell. I'm a senior consultant based in London for Arup. And Arup, we're one of the collaborating partners within the Circular Buildings Coalition. But we also have two very welcome guests, Emma Wink, who is a project lead as part of BEIS, the Basel Agency for Sustainable Energy, and Lennard da Costa Kurek, who is a circular project manager for Concular as well. Now, these two initiatives were some of the selected initiatives as part of the first phase of the Blueprint projects, and they're here today to share their experiences as well. So just to outline a little bit of what we'll be talking about today, I'll give a little bit of a briefing about what the CBC is, who we are, what our mission is, and the purposes of the open call process. Then, as I mentioned, we have two presentations to highlight the circular initiatives that were part of the first wave of Blueprint project processes. And then thirdly, coming towards this year's Blueprint project process as well. Just as a note, this webinar will be recorded and will be uploaded to the Circular Buildings Coalition webpage for later reference as well. So if there's anything that you want or anything that you want to recap over during this session, we'll upload it shortly after as a bit of a reference guide as well. We have a question and answer function within the chat as well. So as we're going through these presentations, there's a chance at the end to respond to any questions and answers. So please do, as we're going through the session, please put your questions through the chat and through the question and answer function. And we will try in the session to get around to answering those questions. But also, if there's any questions that we don't answer in today's session, we'll use them as a frequently asked questions section of the open call process as well. So please do share some questions as we're going through. So the Circular Buildings Coalition, who are we? What do we do and what do we stand for and what's our mission? So the Circular Buildings Coalition, the CBC, has been around since 2022. It's formed as a collaboration, bringing together industry, and it's comprised of 6 different organizations. We have Arup, the World Green Building Council, Metabolic, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, WBCSD, Circular Economy, and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. It's funded by the Loudis Foundation and supported by our colleagues at the Smith Innovation as well as the coalition management function. Now, who are we? What do we do? What do we stand for? We have several key missions that really drive a lot of the work that we do at the Circular Buildings Coalition. First of all, it's creating a common language and knowledge base around circular economy in the built environment, increasing demand for the circular economy solutions, increasing collaboration, quite importantly, across the value chain, and really promoting the development and uptake of scalable solutions. And that's particularly what this open call process is really centered around, particularly that final element here, really supporting and showcasing some of the examples that are present within the industry, particularly around Europe, that are helping to address some of these systemic challenges that we as a built environment sector face as well to adopting circularity and the transition towards a more circular economy. So some of the work that we've done to date, to accompany some of the research and some of the thought leadership pieces that have analysed the current situation of the circularity in the built environment across Europe, and have also identified some of the solutions and pathways and the emissions reduction potential of circular economy solutions. But to support and really activate engagement around the sector, we have established, as part of the Circular Buildings Coalition, an open call process to support blueprint projects. Now, by a blueprint project, what we mean are practical and present examples or present initiatives that are occurring within Europe that support the adoption towards a more circular economy in the sector. Now, we in 2023 into 2024, we have launched the first wave, or the first cohort of our blueprint project process, whereby, in a similar way, we launched an open call process towards the start of 2023 to call for initiatives, inspiring examples to apply, similar to today. Now, of that process, 10 initiatives were selected, and these are on your screen. You can see the titles and the logos of a wide variety and a range of initiatives throughout Europe that in one way or another, in quite complementary but also different ways, have been supporting the practical adoption of the circular economy across Europe, really helping through their solution to unlock and reduce some of the challenges, the systemic challenges that we find ourselves, and support the greater adoption and the scaled adoption of circular economy solutions across Europe. So throughout 2024, we worked with these 10, as part of the Blueprint project process, we worked with these 10 initiatives. And then a second wave prioritized and focused on 5 of the most promising and interesting solutions that we found. And we're still working with these 5 initiatives to further nurture and further support those initiatives as well. And you'll hopefully some familiar names, Bays and Concular being 2 who will be speaking today, are 2 of the initiatives that are part of that process. And they're here today to be able to share some of their experiences and share some of their learnings through this Circular Buildings Blueprint project process. And similarly to what we launched in 2023, in 2025, in this month, in March, we've launched the next wave, the second cohort of the Blueprint project process open call. Now, I'll return to this in a little bit more detail to outline some other kind of key bits of information towards the end of the second session, towards the second half of the session. But in particular, within this year's open call process, we're looking to support, as a CBC, projects and initiatives that really help to accelerate the adoption of the circular economy practices across Europe's built environment. So we're really calling for any and all initiatives that are really driving the practical adoption of circular economy principles at scale around Europe. Now, in particular, and more specifically, we've identified 3 specific challenge areas that we feel through the research that we've undertaken as part of the Circular Buildings Coalition, with the researches, as I mentioned before, and you can find online, as well as some additional deep dive researches, which will be launched in the coming months, as well as engagements through the industry. We have landed on 3 challenge areas to really help to direct and shape some of the initiatives and some of the projects that we're really looking to support within this process. So the 3 areas are, we're looking for projects that help to demonstrate assurance on the quality and reliability of secondary materials in the built environment. We're looking for projects that help to showcase the value of reused and secondary materials for the built environment. And third, but no means least, we're also looking for projects that help to unlock data and information flows across the value chain, really to enable circularity across the built environment as well. There's more information that you can find on the Circular Buildings Coalition website, and the link is there. And our colleagues will be able to put a link to the website on the chat. Underneath each of those challenges, there are really inspiring and leading examples to really pinpoint some of the specific areas and specific actions that we're really aiming to look for and support through the blueprint project process. And I'll revisit these towards the second half of the session, but the deadline being the 11th of May, which is a Sunday, the end of the day on Sunday, the 11th of May. And each of the projects that will be selected and the successful projects can receive up to 70,000 euros in funding, as well as expert mentoring as part of the Circular Buildings Coalition as well. As I said, I'll be able to revisit these topics in a little bit more detail towards the second half of this session. But without further ado, I'd be very happy to invite our colleagues at Concular to take the stage and provide a little bit of an overview of their initiative. And now I'm hoping that we have been able to provide Lennard the ability to come off mute. So please do, Lennard, if you're able to. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Max. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for giving us the opportunity to present what we've done for the Blueprint project. So I'm a circular consultant and circular project manager for Concular, based in Berlin, meaning we try to implement circular building elements in a practical way into new projects. So what we do is we match like existing projects that are being undertaken by a renovation and which do have still reclaimed construction materials, and then we try to bridge like the gap to new projects that try to implement those reused and reclaimed construction materials. And what we usually see is that there's a concern regarding warranty and quality of reclaimed construction materials. So for that reason, we saw there's a big opportunity to develop together with a big insurance company in Germany this reclaimed construction materials insurance. And I'm going to walk you through the project and the process. So next slide, please. So the starting point is that for new construction materials, we usually have 2 years warranty given by the manufacturers. Next slide, please. But it was quite uncertain how this warranty would be applicable to reclaimed bricks or reclaimed construction materials. Next slide, please. Yeah, and we try to give like the same warranty conditions for reclaimed construction materials as for new construction materials. So this mitigates the risks for architects and construction companies, and it is applicable to any construction project that uses reclaimed construction materials. Next slide, please. So at the beginning, we tried to discover, okay, on which building material should we focus? So we clustered 3 different categories. The first would be low risk and low effort reusables, like everything or mostly what has to do with interior fit out materials like furniture, partition walls, floor systems. The second category would be a moderate risk of any damage and a moderate effort to reuse and reclaim those materials, like for example bricks, windows, or external doors. And the third category would be like then high risk materials and high effort reusables. So that meaning that if there was any damage to one of those high risk materials, the consequences would be not so good. So for example, any structural materials like steel beams, if there's any damage, then the damage would lead to big financial issues. So we concentrated then on those on the category 2, this moderate risk and moderate effort reasonable, and more specifically, we concentrated to develop an insurance package for bricks. Next slide, please. And the processes, please, one slide back. Okay, one ahead, please. Okay, yeah, those are the, this is the process, and how it works is that an owner of a deconstruction project, next slide, please, has some kind of material that should be reclaimed. In this case, the bricks. Concular does the quality inspection. Next slide, please. And for this inspection, we use a kind of DIN. It's an industry standard for the assessment of reclaimed construction materials. Next slide, please. And if all the technical qualities are okay, then someone who would like to buy those bricks can purchase the insurance package as well, which is provided by VHV, the insurance company. Next slide, please. So here you see a picture of how this looks like on our marketplace, on our Concular software. So there you have those bricks that have already been processed and are in good condition to be reused. And here you see the possibility to click on the insurance package and to add it to this product. Next slide, please. Exactly. Then it goes in combination with the insurance to the owner of the new building, meaning that, next slide, please. The owner of the new building has a 2 years warranty on any kind of damages that occur to, in this case, the bricks, and behind any kind of damage, if any kind of damage occur, you have the VHV insurance company that covers all the damages related to the brick. Next slide, please. Exactly, as I mentioned, everything is covered by VHV. Next slide, please. So, and this is necessary because what we try to show here is that most of the damages don't occur when the bricks are already installed, but they occur mostly when they are being built or used in the construction process or at the end of their life cycle. So meaning that mostly damages occur at the beginning of construction works or at the end, but not at the moment in which the bricks are already installed. So this is just to show a bit of the iterative process we had with the VHV and the conversations with them to identify, okay, what are the damages that could possibly occur and at which time do those damages normally occur. And next slide, please. It was a lot of meetings we had, a very iterative process, and at the end, what was a key learning for us was to engage with very diverse stakeholders to get a holistic view about different concerns, challenges, and opportunities, because within this whole process, we had us as a provider of reclaimed construction materials. We had the insurance company that operates in their own logic of developing insurance projects, but who typically don't have any broader knowledge about construction processes. Then we had like the concerns of architects and planners, a planner who would then at the end be the ones to use those reclaimed construction materials. And just to highlight that it was very important to sit together with all of them in one table. We had several workshops in which we identified then those challenges to overcome And this was something that occurred throughout the entire process, that we always had to get back to the different stakeholders and talk to them and see if the solution we were about to implement was really covering their needs. And this was a big learning for us, as well as the KPIs, not just using them as benchmarks, let's say, but also using them as a strategic tool to see if we are able to refine the project in some way. And at the end, concluding, it is a process and a product that should help the end users. So at the end, the ones who are trying to build within, so building owners, architects, and all the planners, need to have their challenges and concerns overcome. So it was very valuable to get their insights on the whole process. Yeah, that's from our side. I hope I could give you an introduction and a bit of an overview what the process was like, and looking forward to any questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Lennard. And through the Blueprint project process, has been great to see, how it's evolved and kind of been applied in a number of cases. A really lovely example. Thanks for sharing the experiences as well. And then secondly, I'd love to be able to invite Emma from BASE across, and hopefully you also have the ability to come off mute. And in a similar way, happy to give the floor to you to provide a bit of an overview of your project. So over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Max. Pleasure to be here. So my name is Emma Wink. I'm a sustainable finance specialist at BASE, and I lead the SET Alliance, which stands for Securitization for Energy Transition Alliance. Lots of acronyms, sorry, everyone, which is basically around product as a service, which is a recognized circular business model. We often refer to it as PaaS. And our Blueprint project focuses on the growing use of this model for the services layer of buildings. So here we're talking about cooling, heating, and lighting. And what we're really interested in is how do we guide these solutions and contracts to contribute to a more circular built environment. Next slide, please. So just a bit of background. So BASE is a nonprofit. We are in Switzerland. And for more than 20 years now, we've been developing business models and financing mechanisms trying to unlock investment in climate change solutions. And for, I think, the last 10 years, we've been promoting product as a service. We've been looking into cooling as a service and efficiency as a service because we recognize the potential for this shift towards performance and outcome-based models. So the shift from selling products to selling services, to realign incentives and to deliver resource efficiency, energy efficiency, and help to transition towards a more circular economy. And in 2022, BASE, together with its strategic partners in industry, consultancy, and research, launched the SET Alliance, which was designed to bring the product as a service community together and support the market. So many of our members, there's some here to show you that have a European presence, represent this growing trend for building services. And because this transition to selling services from selling products is challenging, the reason why we exist is because we want to support the market. We raise awareness on the model, we try and build capacity among the different stakeholders, and we also want to develop practical tools, and this is where our project with the Circular Buildings Coalition comes in. Next slide, please. Just for a little bit more context, the graphic is just to show you that this isn't a new model. I'm sure we're all familiar with software as a service, or even Rolls-Royce powered by the hour for airplane engines. But what we're seeing is a trend in technology providers. So these could be energy service companies or manufacturers that are exploring and developing product as a service for energy intensive applications in buildings. So cooling, heating, lighting, and also that customers and financiers are increasingly interested in what these models can deliver in terms of reaching sustainability targets, but also circular economy strategies. But in essence, what we really recognize is that solutions and contracts need to be designed with circularity and reducing environmental impacts in mind, so that it's not just an alternative model in financing. Next slide, please. So basically what we recognize is that there's a growing importance to understand how these solutions contribute to circularity and how this can be strengthened. And we focused on contracts specifically because we see these as the foundation for how these models operate in practice. And that we wanted to create guidance, and that this guidance would be useful for different players. So in the early negotiation phases between a provider and a customer, to define key contractual elements. So thinking about performance-related aspects that are linked to circularity and sustainability goals, but also kind of as a reference when reviewing contracts and talking about responsibilities, performance, and risk sharing. And we think that many providers, customers, and financiers are looking to adapt existing agreements to improve circular outcomes. And at the moment where there isn't really a framework or particular KPIs that these providers can follow, that this will provide some clarity of how to move forward. So in a nutshell, our solution is to develop guidance on this transition to enhancing the circularity of product as a service solutions. And we really want to create an environment where contracts create these incentives for shared responsibility, transparency, and this idea of long-term value creation. Next slide, please. So what has the CBC support enabled? Well, first of all, it connected us to an amazing network, and we were able to conduct in-depth interviews across the kind of building value chain, and we were able to deep dive in workshop with the different stakeholders. So the kind of ecosystem for product as a service is complex, and as everyone probably here knows, the transition to circularity is also complex. So there's these multiple, or these parallel transformations that are happening, and we want to connect everyone up so they understand what work needs to be done. And in addition, the presence in events was really useful for us to drive engagement in the work that we're doing and sharing the knowledge. We've created a white paper that you can read now, and we're developing the contract guidance coming soon. So please stay tuned. Next slide, please. Just to say, if you want to learn more, please connect. We would love to share the work that we're doing. And yeah, we can only recommend working with the Circular Buildings Coalition. It's been an amazing experience, and we really would like to connect with all of you here today. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Emma and Lennard, for your overviews of these two initiatives, which, as mentioned before, has been fantastic to see them evolve and see them develop through the collaboration through the Circular Buildings Coalition. So very much thank you for your time, and thanks for sharing your experiences. And indeed, to any of the participants of the webinar, if you have any questions for Lennard or Emma, feel free to add those to the chat as well. So that was what the first cohort, or an example, 2 examples of the projects that were supported through the first open call process for blueprint projects. And now looking ahead to 2025, the second open call process, happy to provide you with a little bit more information on a few of these topic areas. So this is by means of a short recap. As I highlighted before, really the framing and the solutions that we're driving towards as part of the Circular Buildings Coalition are centered around these 3 key challenge areas: demonstrating assurance, showcasing the value of reuse and secondary materials, and helping to unlock data and information flows to enable circularity. For more information on these 3 areas, as I mentioned, there's a full briefing document which outlines both a little bit grounded in research and the evidence base for selecting these 3 areas, but under each of these three areas, there are very specific and examples of a few initiatives and a few areas that we, through the research and engagement with industry, have helped to codify and identify as well, to really help support that direction. So as a few questions to support and outline a little bit further. So who can apply? Similarly to the first cohort and the first phase of the Blueprint project process, the application is open to almost anyone, be that a startup, a company, organization. Particularly, the Circular Buildings Coalition for this and previous phases is centered around Europe. So we're looking to support initiatives based in Europe, and in particular, those who have a registered office in Europe. Now, what do we mean by Europe? It's the EU 27 plus Switzerland, as demonstrated by BPPS, plus Norway, plus the UK as well. So the continental definition of Europe. How can you apply? So I really encourage you to go to the Circular Buildings Coalition website. There you will find an application form and an application process. Within that, we've outlined 14 questions, about 3 pages of text to really help you, showcase what your initiative is and how you will use this Blueprint project process through the Circular Buildings Coalition to support the initiative as well. You can view the application questions prior to submission as well, but also within the form, you're able to save a draft and revisit and return to those as well. Firstly, there are a set of kind of eligibility criteria questions, which I really encourage you to view before filling out and before drafting the responses to the full application. Please do familiarize yourself with those initial eligibility questions as well, just to ensure that that it could be a potential of a successful project as well. Again, these are on the websites of the Circular Buildings Coalition. Why apply? So as has been highlighted by Emma and Lennard from Concular and BPPS, there are several reasons, at least from our perspective, that we highlight the potential of applying to this open call process. To create impact, we really want to support the transition and the scaling of circular economy solutions. We really want this this process to really unlock some of those current barriers and those current challenges. To secure funding, as mentioned before, there's up to 70,000 euros in funding that can support these initiatives through the Blueprint project process. To access and share knowledge, and to be part of the Circular Buildings Coalition network as well. This webinar and the other webinar series that we've done as an example, it's an opportunity to connect with similar and complementary initiatives, organizations, as well as showcase them to the wider industry as well through webinars, in-person events, etc. as well. So really allowing access and opportunity through the Circular Buildings Coalition. What are some of the key dates to keep in mind as we're going through the process? So the open call was launched at the end of last week. So it is now live, and as I mentioned before, definitely encourage you all to access the Circular Buildings Coalition webpage. There's a tab that is there, which is about the 2025 open call process, which outlines a lot of this information that I'll also be highlighting here as well. We're here today on the 17th for this kickoff webinar. Through this process, from now until the middle of May, the 11th of May, which is where the open call closes. So I definitely encourage you to not leave it to the last minute. But through this process, we have 2 other webinars that can help and illustrate and talk about this open call opportunity. We have one on the 27th of March, whereby we will be doing a couple of deep dive researches or summaries of our deep dive researches, one on concrete recycling and one on insurance products. And that will be hosted by a couple of the other partners of the Circular Buildings Coalition. And that deep dive research is how to shape some of these challenges for this year's open call. And then at the end of April, the 24th of April, we'll be hosting another webinar, this one serving as an information and a question and answer session. So more listening and hearing and having an opportunity to respond to any questions as people are filling out the application process as well. So this will be an opportunity to field a few questions and get some clarifications. Then, most important date, the 11th of May at 1 minute to midnight. So just before on Sunday evening, that would be when the open call closes. Then in June, we'll be announcing the winners once they have been collected, and we aim to share and showcase the winners and announce the winners in June. From there, what does the Blueprint project process look like? So another key date is looking at July. So the aim is to launch the process in a similar way to Concular and Bayes have been part of, to launch the process in July 2025 for 6 months up until December 2025 as well. So that second half of 2025. And what are the outputs? What's the intended outcomes of the Blueprint project process as well? So what we're really aiming and supporting or hoping to support will be some of the piloting and or exploration of a real world demonstration of the stated solution. So how can we put some of these ideas into practice? We would love to be able to diffuse that solution to stakeholders, potential stakeholders that are interested in scaling and supporting, and in particular producing a concise, publicly facing output that helps to summarize the initiative and the lessons learned from these 6 months of piloting and testing that initiative and supporting the development of the initiative as well, in a similar way to help to showcase the solutions that are available. And there's a few examples from cohort 1 that are available on the Circular Buildings Coalition website as we speak as well. So here is a QR code, and I wonder whether Victoria, you're able to put a link into the chat for the link to the website, but also here's a QR code. Feel free to access. This will be your most important link. On this website as well, you can find the briefing document, which, as I mentioned, not only outlines the kind of relevant key information about the key dates, the key application questions, but also helps to frame the key challenges at which this open call is really aiming to support. And then the application form you can access from that main link page. Please do reach out to us if you have any questions in the meantime through info@circularbuildingscoalition.org. We'll be able to regularly monitor that page as well. So please do, if you have questions as you're going through, do reach out to us, and we will aim to support answering those questions as well. And from my side, at least, that is the main parts of information that we were aiming to share. And we have about 15 minutes to open to the floor and really have some opportunity to hear if there's any questions and clarifications as well through this process. So please do use the Q&A section as well. Perhaps if and I see there's a couple of questions that are aimed for Lennard and Emma as well. So I'm happy if you return your cameras on and we can maybe come to those questions as well. But I think maybe initially I will have a look at some of the other questions in relation to the open call process and be able to address some of these as a clarification. So I see one here from John Kurek, who's asking whether this open call process is solely on buildings or whether infrastructure projects could also be considered. It's a really good question. There is a preference towards buildings. However, the 3 challenge areas that have been stated, are not just exclusive to buildings as well. So these are really the driving components to the open call process. So indeed, if there is a solution that you have that can address one of those systemic barriers to the sector at large, but happens to be on an infrastructure project, then indeed that can definitely be considered. But happily to direct you towards those open call challenges, those challenge briefs, and really encourage you to see to what extent they can be aligned further. There's a question also from Wendy, who asks, is it 100% funding? Is it a lump sum? And do you have to deliver detailed financial reports? Hopefully with the outcomes, there are a couple of interim monitoring reports. We've aimed and endeavored not to be as administratively burdensome as possible, but that output, that publicly facing output is what this is kind of focusing towards. With regards to funding and a lump sum, indeed, and I encourage you to go to the application website, within which the selection criteria are also outlined. One of the questions in the selection criteria is asking and looking into the co-funding. So recognizing that the Circular Buildings Coalition can provide some support both in kind in terms of the expert guidance as well as financial, but what we would really love to see is that commitment from the application organizations as to what they will bring within that within this process as well. So definitely encourage you to look at the selection criteria to help shape and share those questions. I see a couple in terms of how many projects will be funded. I think at maximum it will be about 6 projects that will be funded, and as I mentioned, up to about 70,000 euros as well. There's a question from Simon about how many applications would you expect? How many did we receive last year? That is a good question. I believe it was around about 100 applications last year, but we will have to see. But there is that filtering process. There is that definitely that selection process as well. It was a very challenging and difficult process to say yes to only a few when there were so many really inspiring examples last year, but definitely encourage you to apply. And I see a question from Frederica. Would standardization activities qualify for funding? Do initiatives need to be fundamentally novel, or can they build on existing research? That's a really good question. Again, directing you towards the application form and the application grading criteria or the open call criteria, which you can find. There is a degree of novelty. One of the criteria is to explore novel solutions, but indeed they can definitely build on existing research as well. Ultimately, it's how do we scale, how do we support the adoption at scale of the circular economy as well. So really having that in mind of what could that scaled impact be, and providing that compelling case to support both your initiative but the industry at large to adopt circular solutions as well. There are a couple, I believe, for Concular that highlight, let me just see, looking at reuse or, one second, I've lost the question now. I believe there was a question which I can't seem to see where that went. No, I think it's disappeared, or perhaps it's been answered through the question and answer question as well. There's a question from Gerald, which is looking at highlighting the reuse and secondary materials, whether materials also includes elements or components. Indeed, yeah, it can include key components or products as well within that material definition. I think that's the question and answer. Please do, if there are any other additional questions, please do add to the chat or the question and answer section as we're going through. And equally, if there are any questions for BASE or Concular in relation to their project, then please do highlight. Perhaps one question I have for both BASE and Concular would be maybe the additionality or the value of the CBC. It would be interesting to hear what were you able to do as part of this CBC funding that you perhaps otherwise wouldn't have done as well, and highlight that kind of value of what you were able to achieve as part of the open call process. I wonder, Emma, if you'd like to start with that one.
Absolutely, thanks, Max. I think in terms of additionality, so BASE as an organization has typically focused on emerging markets. We have a range of different projects, and a lot of it has been on emerging markets. And so when this call came out, it was really a chance for us to look deeper into how product as a service is developing in Europe and to strengthen our connection. I mean, we're based in Switzerland and we have a project looking at Switzerland, but I think, yeah, it's a stepping stone for us to be able to see what impact we can create in Europe. And of course, in the back of our mind all the time is heating as a service, the kind of elephant in the room, because we've made a lot of progress on cooling as a service and also lighting as a service, but it's still emerging. And so I think that's also been a direct benefit, that we've been able to access a much wider network to talk more about topics that are relevant to Europe, and to bring together experts on circularity and the built environment with industry. It's happening more and more, but I think that this opportunity allowed us to do that, and I think it's really important for us to, if we're trying to scale impact, that we need these different players to be talking to each other. Yeah, I think that's a bit of a long-winded answer, sorry Max, but yeah.
No, perfect, thanks Emma. And I wonder, Lennard, also to you as well, I saw you coming in and out, so happy to recap the question. But for Concular's perspective, the additionality or the value of this open call process or the Blueprint project process with this CBC, what would be the key points that you would like to highlight in terms of that value and enabling some of those activities that you perhaps otherwise wouldn't have been able to support?
Yeah, thanks, and sorry for the inconvenience. I was facing some technical issues, so that's why I in and out. Yeah, for us it was really nice to have this constant meetings with CBC to reflect whether we are on the right track with the project and not to lose sight of the more overall targets that we put ourselves. And also what I really like to emphasize here was the network, as Emma also mentioned, that we could connect with other players in the industry, and also to see whether this challenge and problem of implementing an insurance product was solely defined for Germany, or if other countries and other construction markets are also facing challenges. So having this feedback and this overall network was really something I would like to highlight.
Fantastic, thank you, Lennard. I see a new question within the chat from Kart. which is a good question. Can it be a prototype equipment, or is it more for scalability, not so much prototyping? Yeah, it's a very good question. In particular, within the CBC, it's very much trying to amplify and support established initiatives. So in terms of that technology readiness level, it's less of those really early conceptual and proof of concept ideas, but really helping to support the scaling and diffusion and piloting and refinement of such elements. That being said, if there is a kind of an initiative that can support, that can really help to unlock one of those barriers and challenges that have been identified by the open call process, then indeed we would definitely be interested to hear. But what would be really interesting to hear is how might it be practically applied and demonstrated? What would the pilot be, the practical pilot within those 6 months be, really helping to clarify what would be the activities to support that, and what are the key outcomes of that piloting piece of work, and how can it support the adoption at scale as well, later on in that process. But really helping to underscore this is how it will be practically piloted and applied within that 6 months process for the Circular Buildings Coalition, and with a view on kind of wider scale adoption as well. With that being said, it's also some examples of support, kind of as mentioned by Lennard as well, is taking a solution from one location and seeing the extent to which it can be applied and adopted in another location as well, helping to scale out across Europe as well. That would also be an interesting area to explore and encourage. We would encourage applications in that space as well. Hopefully that answered the question for Kart, yourself. Brilliant. Just in the final 4 minutes or so, maybe I'll leave it 1 more minute or so just for any final call for questions, clarifications for this year's open call process for the Circular Buildings Coalition, before I can wrap up with a few next steps and highlight what the key dates to have in mind. So there's a question from Debbie. Thank you, Debbie. Do the outputs have to be written up within the 6-month period of the project, July to December, etc.? It's a good question. Ideally, by the end of that 6-month process, there would be kind of an established output. However, noting December is a shorter month as well, with annual holidays. There's a little bit of, and we can discuss the exact dates within that as well. The funding will run up until the end of the year in December, but that would be an interesting thing to explore and outline in your application, that timeline, and which feasible elements there would be in there. I think in particular, it would be linked to that December, so early 2026, for example, and not early 2027, within that scale. Fantastic. So just with the last 2 minutes, just to really express my thanks to Emma and Lennard as well. Really thank you for your time, and thanks for sharing your experiences of Concular and BASE, and the Blueprint project process that we've been on together for the past 2 years. One key date, well, the main key date to keep in mind is the 11th of May. That's the application closing date. Another date for your diaries is the 27th of March, where we will be having another webinar, which will dive in, as I mentioned before, into some of the challenge areas and the deep dive research that we've been undertaking. It will be shortly launched on the Circular Buildings Coalition website as well. As I mentioned, it's about the cycling of concrete and insurance, diving into insurance products as well. So another calendar for your date, or another date for your calendar, rather. In the meantime, thank you all for being a part of this webinar. I really encourage you to take a look at all the materials that are on the Open Call website, on the Circular Buildings Coalition.com, and definitely reach out to us in the meantime if you have any questions via the email provided. And with that, thank you all for joining, wishing you a lovely week, and hope to be in touch soon. I hope to hear from your initiative soon.